Hi, and welcome to the show. Today's show is going to be about magic. As you can see, I'm sat next to the lake. I find this area particularly magic, but realistically, magic is a word that gets bandied around, but what is it? And more importantly, what are the entities that are often attached to it? I mean, there are many examples of magic. For example, if you kick a goal and you're playing football and it's somehow does a weird spin and ends up in the net, that is truly magical. I know you can whittle on about air pressure and thermodynamics and God knows what else, but if you've kicked the ball and it's gone in and it shouldn't have gone in, to you it's either very lucky or magic. In the same way, meeting the correct partner is realistically magic. Finding something that you've been looking for such a long time, like a car or a motorcycle or something that will give you pleasure, and you find it for exactly the right price at the right time, that in a way is magic as well. But realistically, what can we actually class magic is? Sorry, I'm going to wipe my nose. So insect bit it. Well, let's go back to understand where our belief in something outside of us came from. If we go back in time, we have the primordial hunter. Now, the primordial hunter was as much the hunter as he was the hunted. So he had to be in balance with his environment. And like most predators, the moment you kill something is the moment that other predators can see you. So you had to have a balance. You had to have a relationship. So you would find that the primitive man or the hunter-gatherer man would communicate with the moon, communicate with the water, communicate with the power of the wind, communicate with the animals. He would be totally insulated within his natural world, and therefore he would attach a great deal of agency to many, many things, which nowadays we don't do that. And from these things that were in his life, he would develop personalities for them and give them names. And this can be traced all over the world. So this is the root of our belief system, is, if you like, anthropomorphizing everything around us. But they didn't just do that because it was a good idea. They did it because they actually felt something radiating from these energies. The stars, the moon, the sun, they felt the energy. So let's keep that in the back of our minds. Because if it's an energy, then it must have a form. In the Arabic countries, it became the Djinn. In the sort of more Germanic countries, it became the gods, earth creatures, earth entities. They all had different names, but essentially they were all fairly the same entity. The Jinn's quite different, of course. The Djinn is more of a desert dweller. It hangs out in the desert and it hangs out in abandoned mansions. So it's slightly different. But through the power of its archetype, the Djinn ended up, if you wish, the number one entity. It can give you power, it can get you women, it can give you a beautiful palace. It helped Solomon build his empire. So it's a bit of a superstar, is the Djinn. However, we have to understand that these energies exist and we all call them different names.
Look at your bank account and then look at your daily calendar. If those two things don't match who you are, you're committed to a routine you learned at 7. In school, you were given the reasonable set of instructions. To make the room work, they told you, sit down, shut up. And what do? You do as you're told. The problem is you took that dormancy into your adult life. Your automatic reflex isn't to fight, it's to bend the knee. I'm going to tell you a secret. The people who refuse to sit down and shut up are the ones who control the room. And they don't do it with rage, they do it with calculation, planning, and a precise understanding of exactly where they are standing inside the machine. I'm a businessman of over 60 years and an internationally published occultist. I have spent decades mapping a system to bypass the wasteful horizontal hard work. This system upgrades the human will. My system yields non-negotiable results. If you value your time and mine, and you are tired of bending the knee and want to change your posture, click the link in the description.
It's hard to accept sometimes. But let's look at what then happened. So we were quite happy contacting different elements, different entities, and using them. And then somebody turned up from organized religion and starts saying to us, what you're doing is really bad. And of course, why is it really bad? Because you're giving agency to these entities and these creatures, and they're not very nice. What you should be doing is joining us, because ours is really powerful. Ours is a really strong God. Yeah, it's a really good one, and it will protect you. And there's no police, there's no army. So belonging to a cult that will look after you and forgetting about your old gods is probably a reasonable exchange. Although people didn't forget about their old gods, they just worshipped them in secret. But to make sure that you didn't wander off into their cults, they usually said, oh, if you worship somebody else because you understand what you're doing, then we're really going to have to kill you because our God is so loving. So this is how we ended up with an organized religion and a natural religion. And of course, the same powers that give us magic became the workings of the higher God. And they would say that this is the most powerful God, this is the one that gives you all the power, where a few generations before, your power was taken from a myriad of gods and a myriad of energies. So what does that tell us? Well, realistically, if we strip it down to the nuts and bolts, which we have to do, we're left with, there are certain energies. Are they within ourselves or are they outside of ourselves? That's literally a moot point. If you are a practicing magician, you've often pulled these entities through to this realm of consciousness. And I've done it myself in front of witnesses, and they have felt and they have seen the difference in ambience, and they've seen flames freeze, they've heard the water suddenly stop, they felt like they were in a cathedral. The cynic would argue that this was some kind of weird hypnosis that allowed this to happen. However, the people I was doing the ritual with were nowhere near this kind of hypnotic ambience or technique. We were just doing a ritual, and this is what happens. So there is something. I can't tell you what it is, but there is definitely something. And that something even lives within the organized religion. You'll see the evangelicists or the extremists doing their best to summon their God, and realistically miracles do happen. So so the one thing that tells me is this energy is completely real. And then if we look at this energy under the microscope, and you'll say, but they haven't ever tested for the energy. Well, of course they have. They give people sugar and they stop having cancer, and they call it placebo. So the thing that they call placebo, people will call faith, people will call entity, people will call it the gods. But the fact of the matter is that something has changed the human state. So if we can change the human state and we don't need the organization, have we ever needed the organization? Well, we have, because we've always wanted to protect it. If we have a group of guys who are going to protect us, then I think it's a reasonable trade-off. But you must understand that realistically, the hunter, when he's doing his capturing the beast, he's not wearing ritual gowns, or he's not buying expensive grimoires or expensive paraphernalia to make this happen. It's all down to his belief and faith, which is incredibly important to understand. So what is magic? I believe it's a mixture of faith. I believe it's a mixture of believing something very, very strongly, and also being sensitive to change. I hope this has kind of helped and allowed you to play around with what you think the idea of magic is, or the idea of what the entity is, or even what your idea of the God is. Because everything that I've spoke about runs through all of them. It doesn't matter if you're a devout Hindu, it doesn't matter if you're a devout Muslim, it doesn't matter if you're a devout Catholic or a Christian. It makes no difference. If you have that succinct belief, then really miraculous things happen. Magic, if you wish. So thank you for listening, and thank you for joining me.